Old Cholera Cemetery, St. Andrew, Jamaica. The Old Cholera Cemetery is a privately owned piece of land located in St. Andrew, Jamaica, with a very disturbing history. That very same plot of land was the final resting place of many Jamaicans, rich and poor, young and old, black and white. They were quickly buried at the peak of a deadly cholera outbreak in 1850. About 67,000 people were infected, and the lives of around 40,000 people met a tragic end as the contagious disease spread through the population like wildfire. Jamaica's population at that time was roughly 400,000. This deadly outbreak was said to have started in Port Royal, Jamaica, a hot spot at the time for partying with pirates and seafarers. Cholera wiped out about 1/3 of the population of Port Royal and almost 70% of residents of Port Maria in St. Mary. An account of the first outbreak of the disease was reported to the authorities by J. Watson Esq, surgeon of the Naval Hospital, Jamaica. In his report, he described the everyday lives of the 700 to 1,000 people population of Port Royal in great disgust, further stating that everything being thus admirably disposed to encourage the full development of any pestilence. He stated that Port Royal is built on a peninsula of sand, which is only about 2 or 3 feet above the sea level. He also stated that the little seaview town was overcrowded and the people lived in deplorable conditions, sleeping in small houses on mats on the damp floor. They hardly bathed, or even changed their dirty clothes. The disease very quickly spread to the rest of the little island through this town, like quicksilver. He was called to see a woman, about 50 years of age. She claimed she was purged the night before but still appeared to be cold and had terrible cramps. She was throwing up a rice-color-looking liquid, one of the symptoms of cholera. She passed away the same day. 2 other people became affected with similar symptoms in the same neighborhood and passed away rapidly. That was when he decided to report it, and an investigation of its origins started. About a week before cholera appeared, 2 young men arrived from Chagres, Panama to Port Royal. They reported that their father died of cholera at Chagres shortly before they left. The men were suspected to have carried the disease to the island, but they only had a common fever which they quickly recovered from. And further investigation proved that they weren't the source of the disease. About a week or less after cholera appeared in Port Royal, a few stray cases were reported in Kingston, which had a population of 50,000 inhabitants at the time. It was a large city situated at the head of the harbor. Little after that, the deadly disease was found in Spanish Town, which was the capital, and was about 12 miles from Kingston. The low-lying villages on the plain and near the margins of this extensive harbor were most severely attacked. The disease went on to mash up the central and northern parts of Thailand, but the most mortality happened in Kingston and Port Royal. People were dropping like flies. Panic, grief and filth soon polluted the air. Everybody and Granny was terrified, and the rumors started. Once people found out that it was contagious, they turned on each other.
Follow Jamaican True Stories.
Many health facilities were unwilling to tend to the sick, and even funeral homes, among others, refused to properly bury the dead. People resorted to dumping the bodies anywhere they could in order to get rid of them, leaving John Crows and carrion crows to discover and fold them belly. Husbands refused to put their hands on the deceased bodies of their wives, to lift them into coffins, and even mothers deserted their children when the disease took them. These animalistic survival practices were mostly observed among the upper echelon and elitists of Jamaican society. The poor showed great willingness and empathy to each other. Despite those animalistic survival tactics, many of the well-housed and well-fed perished among the poor and helpless, their bodies just a number added to mass graves. Built as a quick solution to a great tragedy. In 2016, the Kingston and St. Andrew Corporation KSAC gave approval for the development of the Cholera Cemetery, after receiving formal advice from the National Environment and Planning Agency NEPA, and the Ministry of Health. After eyebrows were raised, Chief Medical Officer CMO in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Winston D. Lahaye, reassured the public that there is no medical cause for concern regarding the proposed commercial development on lands at the old Cholera Cemetery in St. Andrew. Minister of Health, Dr. the Hun, Christopher Tufton, pointed out that the land in question is privately owned and government's influence and control over the property is only to ensure that it is not used in a way that may be hazardous to the general population. Many members of the LGBTQ lifestyle had to be evicted from said land as they called it home despite its sketchy past ever since they were evicted from the gully. Today, a luxurious commercial building stands tall, shedding a more positive light on a once deplorable scenery. Follow Jamaican True Stories for more.